And that is why you never bring a hippie to a second location. All right. Russ, what do you have something to say?
Yeah, so yesterday the WWE had their big event, SummerSlam. They did have a wall of virtual fans, a lot of different like little TVs. The only problem was what they were doing and the sounds that were coming out were completely different in my eyes. So they either filtered them or they just used their own sounds, but let these fans watch and let the wrestlers sort of interact with the fans, but I don't think the fans were heard. And so to me, that part of it was weird and pretty much a failure because just having faces there, I don't think is the end all.
Yeah.
In this case.
It's a tough one, like I've wondered why these guys like like the Jimmy Fallons of the world aren't doing that, like having like actual like if I was them, I would have my Facebook group and they would
I mean put 1,000 people in the audience, but let them interact because
or even just laugh, whatever.
Yeah, the thing but don't put in laugh tracks instead of them laughing. The thing that was missing was in like a lot of wrestling matches, people would chant certain things, they would do certain things at certain times. They would boo, heartily at certain times, and that kind of stuff was contrived. And that was like, if you're going to do that, I'm not sure it was worth it.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, watching shows like Bill Maher and Jimmy Fallon without audiences, it's painful because it just feels awkward. But watching Colbert is painful just with audiences or without. Yeah,
but I'll tell you what, who's figured it out is John Oliver. He's doing it without, and it's still great. Like it took a little while. It was a little bumpy at the beginning, but it's still great. But I'll switching over to the NFL, the league that really has nothing under control. They have this lab in New Jersey that all these positive / negative tests now, and they're 17 days out from starting their season. Now, of course, like the ESPN spin is, well, it's a good thing this didn't happen a month from now. Having it happen 17 days before a season starts is terrible because now you don't know for at least 4 or 5 of these teams that you're using this New Jersey lab for, probably more, what's accurate and what isn't. And that is the worst possible situation.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me how it's being underplayed. And they're going to have fans. So in Miami, they said they're going to have 13 fans. 13,000. They probably will have 13. They'll have 13,000 fans for their home opener. Kansas City said they're going to have 23% of their fans. They actually practiced in front of their fans. Like, to me, that is the worst thing you could do. Why would you even want fans to risk it for a practice?
Right.
Like, I don't even understand. I know. And I don't even understand that. And then the Jaguars are the only other team. And this is the crazy part. They're the only other team on record that is definitely having fans. Even Jerry Jones, who was mouthed off about having them, hasn't said anything. So only 3 teams out of the entire league have committed to it with 2 weeks to go before the league starts. So what if in a week, all of a sudden, they call you up as a season ticket holder and say, oh, by the way, we're having that first game and you have to be there or you're going to, you're just going to get charged for your tickets. Like, that's a horrible situation to put fans in.
I was talking to somebody who is a Bills season ticket holder, and I believe right now New York State and New Jersey are both saying you can't do it.
Correct. But they're decisive about it. Not everybody is.
But as with everything in New York State, after a while, they're going to allow it. Like like today, they just allowed the gyms to open up.
Right.
In New York State. So they may allow maybe 1/4 of the capacity of Bills Stadium, which I think would be 12,000, 15,000, something like that, to come in and socially distance. But this person who was a season ticket holder, they said, well, how is this going to be determined? It's basically going to be some sort of lottery where they're going to say, okay, we're going to pick people out of a hat. So 20% of your season ticket base is going to get tickets for 1 week, and then maybe the other 20% for the following week. And they're only going to pay for the games that they go to.
So, okay, great. That's good that they're only paying for games that they go to. How do you plan your life for that?
That's what I'm saying. You can't.
I mean, if you have a family and let's say you wanted to go to the games, you're now going to tell your family, well, we're in the lottery. Let's see what happens. And like for every week for the next 12 weeks or whatever, however many weeks they last, if they last a season, you won't know if you're going.
Hey, I plan my life around the Powerball. If I win it, I'm going to Tahiti.
And how's that worked out for you?
I'm still here.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's just nuts. That's really ridiculous. I don't know. That
I just can't believe
it seems like when this whole thing first happened, I was so proud of our society for basically shutting everything down, and
yeah,
because it's hard to do. Obviously,
it is hard to do.
There's huge financial implications to that.
Yeah.
And but we did it. We shut it down anyway. And now, as this has gone on, and the death rate isn't so high considering the amount of people, I think people are just like the risk versus reward thing. The whole thing is shifting.
Yeah, there a lot of people are just ignoring what has happened.
Right. And they're gonna go, and it's likely to wallop us way worse than it did before. And I think what the NHL has shown, it's by far been the best situation of anybody.
Yeah, I mean it's by far now. But again, to be fair, we don't think the NHL is going to start a regular season in a bubble next year. We don't.
No, they're not.
I'm not going to say they're not, because actually I have talked to some people, and they have several different plans in place, and one of them. I don't
think that's their number one plan.
No, but one of them is to do a bubble for the first month or so of the season with divisions, put divisions in bubbles and have those games be played, while depending on when where we are with vaccines and all that stuff. It depends, some people are saying we could see a vaccine in December now. Some people are saying,
yeah.
But I mean, it's not going to be the safest thing in the world to do that.
Yeah, somebody's saying right after the election you're going to see a vaccine.
Right. So I think that they're going to a point when the NHL plan, I think, would be to start the next season, if everything's still bad, in bubbles, with divisional bubbles.
Okay.
I
hope for the Leafs' sake that they have the bubble in a different city so they have a chance of winning.
Right, exactly. All right, let's move on to the end of the show. Here we go.
Buffalo, they'll never win.
That's true.
We'll be joined by Jan in a little bit, I think. Here we go, guys. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, August 24th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. We're in my Team Europe shirt. Russ has his World Cup of Hockey.
Yep.
And I have a blue shirt.
Just have a plain blue shirt, which is maybe Team Europe's practice jersey.
Maybe.
You're watching
the towel that you wipe your stick off with.
It's reflective of my mood.
Right, you're blue. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world, just like a comfortable blanket that you can settle in with. And here we are. Last night, I put out my picks about, I was the only one to go with Vancouver, and
that was wrong.
And I've never been more confident, and I'll tell you why. All right, and here's why. All right, after watching this game last night, I've never been more confident about the Vancouver-Vegas series, and here's why. I did an article a few years ago about teams getting blown out in playoff games, and I've continued to follow it, and it is still the case that if a team loses by five or more goals in a playoff game, the team that loses will win the playoff series 68% of the time, which is a bizarre stat.
We lose 8-0. We got you right where we want you.
Right. So they have now put it in. But we already had one with the Flyers in Montreal this year, right? But let's go. I'm going to read you some scores from last year, just to show you what happened. Okay, so
for game one scores. Game one is different.
Right. Game one. It tends to be. You're right that it tends to be truer. If it's earlier in the series. But these are not all game one scores, and yet they're all going to be interesting. Because Calgary beats Colorado last year in game one 4-0. And then Colorado comes back and obviously wins that series. Carolina and Washington, Washington beats Carolina 6-0. You remember? Carolina comes back and wins that series. Carolina also beat Washington 5-0 in that series. So back and forth there.
So you're going to bet on Vancouver now? Is that what you're saying?
Vegas beat San Jose 5-0 last year in the famous series, and then Vegas ends up losing that series in 7 games. You remember that? San Jose beats St. Louis 6-3. Now that's not a 5-0 game, but it's still a pretty good blowout. St. Louis beat San Jose 6-3. And of course, St. Louis wins that series. Boston beats St. Louis 7-2 in game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. Another 5 goal discrepancy, and St. Louis wins the Stanley Cup. So it's, this year the Montreal game 2 beats the Flyers 5-0. Montreal, Flyers end up winning that series. So yes, Vancouver's it's right where they want them. This tells me more than ever that I should be confident about my Vancouver pick in 7 games.
Well, Okay. The most interesting thing about yesterday's game was Ryan Reeves cackling and doing an imitation of a rooster toward Antoine Roussel, and then Antoine Roussel giving him a hug and getting a 10-minute misconduct. Other than that, the game was completely one-sided. I texted you guys, men versus boys, and that's what it was.
Yeah, this was a bad shutout for Leonard because bad things are going to come now. Now that he's 8-1, he is setting himself up for failure.
for a precipitous fall. I mean, this was. I mean, I'm not saying Vancouver's not going to win games in the series because I think they are. And like I said yesterday, I like where Vancouver's going. They've got a good core of young talent, but this was a curb stomping in Game 1. And I don't know. Can they bounce back from it? Sure. Are they going to win this series? No, they're not going to win this series.
Yeah, you could come back from the sidewalk slam, but you're not going to win.
And people are saying in the chat room that just a contrarian, guys. I went 6-2 in the first round, okay, and I went 6-2 in the round in the elimination or whatever.
Well, that's fine. That was better than me, but
so, yeah, I can be totally contrarian. But the only two I missed in the last round were Dallas, and the one I missed that everybody else would have gotten right was probably
other than your
I think Carolina and Calgary. Both.
Okay. Other than your statistics, please tell us what you liked about what Vancouver showed us yesterday.
Absolutely nothing. No, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing that Vancouver did last night that was worth anything. I mean, to me, it was a very bizarre, match, and it just shows the difference between, like, to me, coming out of Calgary, or Vancouver not coming out of Calgary, Vancouver. I'm sorry,
St. Louis.
Right, beating St. Louis. I think that to me, the only thing I can say is you beat a Stanley Cup champion, and that feels like you've done something massively important, and you come out the next game, maybe for this young team way too confident. Like, they look to me, they just weren't ready for what Vegas threw at them.
I'm not saying this with any kind of joy in my voice. If it was Edmonton, who was the last standing Canadian team, or Montreal, I would be saying it with some pleasure in my voice. But 1993 Canada, that's the last time you won a Stanley Cup, and it's going to be another year because Vancouver, although being good and although being very young and talented, it's not going to happen this year.
It's not going to happen.
So but eventually, somebody in Canada is going to win, and I still think the first team that's going to win a cup from Canada will be a team that wears blue and white, and it's not in Vancouver. But
Edmonton,
not Winnipeg either.
Winnipeg, they'll actually wear blue and white in some way, shape, or form.
Let me ask you this question: at 6-1 with a 9.18, is Leonard the best goalie right now in the playoffs? I think you have to say he is.
Yeah, no, he's playing incredibly well, and he definitely got a lot of help last night again. I'm not saying he's,
and I don't think the Blackhawks could afford him anymore, because I don't think he's going to walk back there even for a 2-year deal now. He's going to want 4 now.
Yeah.
I think it still depends on how it ends for him. That's like, and I do agree with you that he's played amazingly well.
I mean, his lifetime. This is surprising, Eck. I'll admit this. Yeah. I just looked it up. His lifetime save percentage in the playoffs is actually .927,
which is it's just phenomenal. I mean, he's showing everything that he needs to show right now. If he does tend to be a guy who goes up or down in like blazes of glory, so I think
that's true.
I think there's still a chance here that this, he could have a couple bad games and things could fall apart quickly for him, in which case, but if he could, if he keeps playing like this and Vegas wins the Stanley Cup, or even gets to the Stanley Cup finals, there's no way.
Then he won't even leave Vegas. They'll re-sign him.
Yeah, they'll just re-sign him then. And
I don't know about that.
Fleury open to go play for Seattle.
No, they might buy out Fleury, Mike. We don't know. Here's what we don't know. If they are annoyed with Fleury and his agent, they could buy him out.
Yeah, I think that they're not annoyed with Fleury, and I get a feeling that we would see Fleury fire his agent before that happened.
Yeah, that would be a hefty buyout, because remember, he's got a $7 million cap hit for 2 more years.
Yeah,
right.
I'm just looking at the buyout.
They would trade him. Someone would take him.
Yeah, I think that and then they could retain salary, but they're up against the cap. But if they bought him out, and I'm just looking at cap friendly here, just to see what the buyout would be. It would be. Let's see here. I'll give it to you when I.
Okay. I would say this: most likely they would try and trade him, and
they'd be able to trade him.
I can't think that it's impossible now that they won't trade him.
And you can trade him. There's teams like You know,
Calgary.
Calgary's a great example. I mean, Calgary gets Fleury, or even Edmonton. You know, like I mean,
but neither one of those teams can handle a $7 million cap.
No, but like you said, I think Vegas would eat a little.
Yeah,
they would have to retain some salary. But you know, I think that at the end of the day, you know, any team that's really, I mean, it might be a little bit, you know, we
wouldn't even have
rather trade into the Eastern Conference, you know, if they can.
I mean, the craziness of this year, Eck, we wouldn't have even been talking about this if the season never ended, because he would have
where Fleury should go. Sorry,
he would have stayed in Chicago. They wouldn't have made the playoffs, and none of this conversation would have come up. But instead, all of this happened, and he's playing out of his mind.
Buyout would extend 4 years. Cap hit would float between $2 to $3 million for each year. So they'd be saving $4 million in cap space, but extending it for 2 years further.
It's not terrible.
Not terrible, but they'd probably be better off retaining, say, $2 million off of the top and trading him as a $5 million goaltender.
Right.
But I'm sure there'll be enough teams out there. You know, again,
he's not going to be hard to get a team. Yeah, they're not going to be. You're going to be able to trade. There will be somebody who will definitely take a shot at him because he's not just Marc-Andre Fleury who's won, you know, and gotten close to winning.
I don't know. He's good. He's good for a team. And but again,
promotional tool. Like he's a great promotional tool if you get him.
They probably were already a little down on him by the way they were playing Leonard. I can't believe this situation's helped his situation.
Yeah, no, I don't think it has either. Yet he's been a great soldier, as we know, and
he is. It's not his fault, but he's got the age now, and he's got this, and the other guy's winning.
Well, Brian Burke had a very interesting take on this whole situation because he basically said, he says, if he had to guess, he said Fleury knew. Fleury told Walsh, but didn't realize that Walsh was going to go above and beyond and be a complete tool and do what he did. And, you know, so, but the thing is that do you really go down the road of pissing and moaning about playing time when your team has a legitimate chance of winning the Stanley Cup? And they do. That it's them in Colorado, or maybe an outside chance of Dallas coming out of the West. Probably, more than likely Vegas or Colorado. And you just don't do that.
No, and also when you have Robin Leonard, who, you know, not only can he turn cold quickly, he can also get hurt quickly, and he's a guy who has gotten hurt a lot too. So, you know, there's
it's not like Fleury's going to play, you know, 60 games anymore either. He's not.
Right. Like if I'm Fleury, you know, you just hang in there, and you might actually still have your chance to win your Stanley Cup with this team. It depends. I mean, it really. There's so many variables at this point. I mean, and they're great. They're a great team. They really. I mean, they're very focused in. Like the one thing about Vegas, and
they are locked in right now.
They just seem like they're the most locked in team. You know, the Islanders are incredibly locked in too. We'll get to that in a second, but
they are.
You know, and also Varlamov has been a great goalie too. So, you know, that was brought up in the chat
when he's healthy.
Yeah, but his stats in the playoffs are, you know.
I know when he's healthy, he's good. I don't know if they're good every year. I think he's had an off playoff or two as well.
Oh yeah, he has. He's definitely had. He's definitely there. So, I mean, yeah, people in Colorado remember Varlamov having some issues in the playoffs for sure.
Samsonov will take over in Washington. Davy Jones said that. That made me laugh.
Yeah.
No, you know, he's talking about the goalie. I'm thinking he's talking about Sergei as the coach. All right.
God.
Yeah, the goalie for sure. Yeah.
No, that'll happen as goalie. I thought he was talking for coach because everybody's talking about replacing Reardon, and that's where my mind went first.
Yeah. We'll talk about
Sergei Samsonov.
For sure. I read about that today a little bit. The other game, Boston, Tampa. The thing that's interesting about this game to me is, you know, we've always done like Columbus has Tampa's number. They make Tampa battle. Tampa has to fight harder than they should in the playoffs, stuff like that. Well, they played the same kind of game that they played against Columbus again. Like where they don't come out motivated, and then eventually they kick in, but it's too late. Or, you know, it's just like this to me. Maybe the problem is not so much the team they're playing against, and like the problem is the actual Tampa Bay Lightning, who have.
I don't know. Like I felt like the first period wasn't a great period, right? But they had a great second, and they played well to close it out. And so I think Boston caused a few of those things. I do think Boston jumped on them, which is fine. We expected that Boston would do that. But I mean, if we take away that great play, what is really the difference in this game?
Oh yeah, it was really tight. I mean,
it was really tight.
Boston dominated the first period. They outshot them 15-10. They outchanced them. They got the goal late in the first from Coyle. And then they get the power play goal in the second period. And again, I said yesterday, if they can't stop that power play, the Boston's going to win this series. But then, Boston did what Boston does at times. They sort of sat back. They let Tampa carry the play to them, which is dangerous because Tampa's got so much talent. And then when they got up 3-0 on that phenomenal play by Bergeron, stealing the puck and getting it to Marchand, and Pasternak, and then Marchand, I think they got a little complacent and they sat back, and really it took till the second half of the third period for Tampa to get on the scoreboard. And it wasn't Halak's fault because both of those goals were deflections off of his own defenseman.
Yeah.
But I never got the sense that they were really in danger of blowing that lead. Maybe it's just my confidence in what Boston can do.
No, I get it. I do get it. But something I had said to Mike offline that I truly believe is the same way that Boston desperately needed Pasternak's shot, and we saw why yesterday. Yeah. If you had Stamkos on Tampa and they were on the power play or they were on the man advantage late in the game with the goalie pulled, you'd be a little more worried, wouldn't you?
Big time. And where is he? Like, is he going to play? Is he going to?
I think he is going to play. I think he's going to play next game or the game after. I'm guessing. I have no idea.
Yeah.
If he does, then let's see where he's at. Is he?
Well, will the injury report from last night hasten Stamkos coming back in the lineup, because Ryan McDonough left the game yesterday, did not practice, and it's not known whether he'll play in game 2. And this isn't losing Eric Cernak. This is losing.
No, it's a big deal.
This is a big deal. That puts more weight on Hedman. And, Hedman yesterday, when Hedman's got to go deep in the offensive zone and take on Zdeno Chara, that shows you that you're sort of like, you're comatose, at least that they were at the end of the second period. Then now they woke up in the third, but, you don't need your Norris Trophy candidate defenseman to go in. I mean, that's a desperate situation for him to have to spark the team, and not somebody like Patrick Maroon or Yanni Gord or somebody else who's a little more, a little more disposable, so to speak.
Oh, for sure.
But, Boston was in control in that game. If they play like that, they will win this series, not going away. But I expect Tampa to respond. But the loss of McDonough is a big loss if they lose him for a long time.
Tampa needs, and they need Vasilevsky. The way to beat Boston is with goaltending. You have to get goaltending. And Vasilevsky,
he was okay. He wasn't great.
He was okay.
He could lock down better. He could.
Got to be great. Like in my man, like if he's great, because what we saw last year is that the Bruins can get down on themselves if they run into a hot goalie. Like Binnington showed that the Bruins can start to implode a little bit, and that's the only way to get to them. I think you got a really, really good goaltending, and Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the NHL to me. So this is still a very much of a series here, because this.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, end of the day, we could nitpick and say, yeah, Boston was better than Tampa in that game, but they weren't miles better, and at times Tampa did rise to the occasion. Actually, in a way, I felt like Boston probably was over emotional for a while in that game. In the way that they were picking fights and everything. And we'll see if they could even equal that emotion the next game, because that's going to be hard to do now, because they were exceptionally dirty in that game. Like Chara, there was a lot of that. And on both sides, don't get me wrong, both teams knew that it would be this way, but it's hard to play that way for a 7-game series.
Yeah.
But if there's a team that has I'd say permanent case of red ass, it's the Bruins. They play with that edge a lot, and they play it all that way all the time. So they stay motivated. We do have
to talk about Brad Marchand's post game, where he basically said the round robin games they didn't care about. They were exhibition to them.
Bingo.
Great. I'm glad, and it's,
but we knew that. For them,
especially from how they played, they did still, struggle against Carolina quite a bit.
But they weren't putting their all into it. That was the point.
They struggled against Carolina, but won the series in 5 games without, and won 2 of the 3 without their best player.
But also Carolina's injuries.
They definitely were trying as hard as they could with Carolina, but it probably took a little to kick in for them because they did ignore the other games. Hey.
And we've said there's a Bruins arrogance that that they do believe that they can win anytime and they want to. That's how they play, and that's good, and that has worked well for them.
And there was a call that was missed in that game. In the third period, Wagner got run into the glass, and nothing was called, not even a 2-minute penalty, a 2-minute minor, nothing was called.
Was that the one early in the third?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was shocked there was no penalty for that.
But then somebody got a penalty for pancaking McAvoy in the corner.
Yeah.
Because it was against the boards.
Yes.
Yeah. These things
was against the glasses.
Yeah. Well, Jan, while we just bringing you in here before we move on, give us your thoughts on the two.
Wait, hold on, Jan. There's no chewing gum on the show. You know that's not allowed. I'm kidding.
Thanks, Mom. You want to call the teacher on me too? Should I stick it under my desk?
If you want to.
Yeah.
Something I said?
Exit stage left. Give us your thoughts on the two games from last night.
So Tampa Bay, Boston, the thing we talked about obviously was the first line of Boston potentially turning the tide, and clearly that was the case yesterday. I mean, they have 7 points out of the 3 goals, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, they dominated. I thought Halak had a strong game. McDonough got hurt, but I thought even before that he didn't have a particularly good game yesterday, especially on the third goal that they scored last night. That was a hellacious giveaway to lead to the goals. Great pass, obviously no look by Bergeron for the goal to Marchand.
Now, I didn't see him get hurt. Did you see how?
No, I didn't either.
I didn't either.
I mean, Tampa clearly, look, they had no choice but to try to close, and they did make it interesting and made it close towards the end. I mean, the thing, if I'm taking one positive away, I thought Victor Hedman had a really strong game last night. He was all over the place. So to me, that's the biggest positive I take out of last night. If any concerns of an injury from him lingering from the prior round, to me, were eradicated yesterday based upon seeing his play. And look, these are the kind of games you're going to get. I mean, I don't see Boston having 2-3 goal leads a lot during the series. I think it's going to be very tight checking, close in terms of scores. I mean, look, it was they made it 3-2 regardless of how they made it, and they had a minute 21 to try to score. They just couldn't get the equalizer. So, yeah. I mean, what we expected a little bit last night, I think we both expected a bit more offense out of Tampa, or a bit more of an attack, but give Boston credit. And the guy we talked a bit about earlier was Charlie Coyle that you guys were high on. He had a really strong game yesterday also, besides the first line.
And I think Stamkos is going to get in there. I do, because when you saw the difference with Pasternak playing and that shot, Tampa still needs that shot too. Yep. It's evident. But what I also said, Jan, that maybe you saw as well, Wagner got run into the glass and nothing was called. Like not even a 2-minute minor. Like that was crazy. Like what? I don't understand it.
I don't. I mean, the officiating for the most part's been okay. I haven't been fully enamored by the officiating. So in terms of the second game, I mean, Mike, you put in our group chat, men versus boys. I mean, first of all, the speed by Alex took to basically blow past. I mean, look, Tanev is nothing special, but Miller can motor, and he basically just completely blew past them in terms of that chip and charge type of play. Vegas came in waves. Vancouver was able to parry it for a little bit, but they weren't able to stop them. And Leonard wasn't challenged a lot. When he came up big. Sorry, Eklund, I know your goalie you wanted to be in is not getting in, at least for game 2 and probably for game 3 right now. But I thought Leonard was very good yesterday. I thought Vegas pretty much dominated in all three phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams, including goaltending. Markstrom didn't have a bad game. Look, he made a lot of initial saves. They just scored a bunch of dirty goals. You saw at least 2 or 3 of the goals came right in front off of rebounds, including the first 2 of the game. So give Vegas credit for going to the dirty areas, and Pacioretty, kind of not a great goal, but still a nice goal for him to get, to give him a little bit more confidence moving forward. But Stone was just all over the place. I mean, you said it yesterday, Russ, that we thought Stone would have a big series, and he literally was just all over the place yesterday.
He's hard to handle when he's
the level of emotion and physical play he plays every single shift is pretty evident, especially these playoffs. And that's
what defending Mark Stone.
It takes him to another level that maybe other teams don't have. When you combine the skill and the effort, that just makes him so effective.
Well, that's the thing, and that's where I was getting at yesterday. When you have Stone and Pacioretty and things are going right, they're big. Stone's not fast, but they're big guys. They get in position that are hard to move out of the way, and they have great hands.
And I mentioned it when we were first talking about this, but I'll just say this again. If Ryan Reeves is this much of a disruptive force in this series, then Vancouver has no chance, because really it's like, okay, if he
started the opening shift, he started the opening faceoff.
Right, if it's him versus Antoine Roussel, I mean, obviously he's going to get underneath Roussel's skin, and he's going to goad Roussel into doing something stupid. And Roussel, yesterday the stupid thing was giving Reeves a hug. We know it's going to escalate to something where he's going to go, bonkers, whether it means checking the goaltender or hitting somebody from behind. And that's what Vegas wants, to get him out of his game, because he's a pain in the ass to play against. But if if Reeves is that disruptive, that's what they want. That's playing right into Vegas.
I just saw this tweet. Vegas put up a tweet last night. Now in goal for the Vancouver Canucks, a different guy. Like, that's a little. It's like, trolling is one thing. If I were the team, I'm like, you know what? Let's get out of this series.
There's no need.
Don't poke the bear here.
That's true. That's a good.
Who tweeted that? Gritty?
No, the Vegas guy is pretty good.
No, Gritty's in Toronto, Ohio. Who knew there was a place? I had no idea.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Of course you knew that.
Well, Jan, you missed it. I said that it's exactly where the Canucks have him right where they want him.
It's right next to Toledo, I'm sure.
Because I listed all the times in the past couple years where a team gets killed in a playoff game early in the series, and 68% of the time that
it's one game. I mean, you wash the slate clean, you come back, and
the one.
No, but Vegas is in a bad spot now because of this stat, Jan.
Because they defeated them, because they defeated them so badly, and because when you
beat them too badly,
teams that win by five or more lose series. It's just consistently the case. And I think that, although I joke around about this a lot and say I do think there is something to what happens when a team dominates a team like that in a game, especially early in the series.
I think the next game, yes, Vegas might lose that next game because of it. I'm not going to give the series because of that. No.
Problem is getting that momentum back. Once you scored, if you can't score goals and you remember back to the time you scored all the goals you wanted, it plays with teams. It does. And that definitely, the joke about, we should save some of these goals for another game is not like a joke by like coaches. They're always like saying, okay, we'd rather not do this. They'd rather.
Coaches are trained to be paranoid. That's part of their job.
Yeah, there are statistical backups to that situation. Let's go on to the coaching situation for the Cavs. Mike, you have something else?
No, I just wanted to mention Toronto, Ohio is southwest of Pittsburgh, right along the Ohio River, right on the border of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. So if you want to go visit the CN Tower.
Yeah, and you've never been there. You haven't.
Never been there. I didn't say I was
either, because I've been right in that area a couple times.
I've been in that area too, and I had no idea the place exists.
It's near Steubenville.
How far is it from Wheeling, West Virginia? Like Wheeling, West Virginia is right around there too, isn't it?
Yes, it's northwest of Wheeling.
I guess that's where Captain Merrill Steubing was born.
Yeah, right. I played several shows in Wheeling, West Virginia. Spent a week there.
I think Jerry West is from Wheeling, West Virginia.
Yeah, Wheeling's not a great place. I've driven through it.
Were you wheeling in the sky? Never mind.
No, like I said.
Okay, can we move on, please?
Yes.
We more bad puns. As I said. All right, moving on. Okay, so let's talk about the coaching situation in Washington a little bit more, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about Mike Milbury. For fun.
Sure, let's get more polarizing while we're at it.
Go for it. Right. All right. So, here's the deal with the coaching. Obviously, we talked. We have a coach fired. It's not unexpected. We all it was completely as expected as you could be. But yet, what's the whole circumstances, it has brought back the whole circumstance of how he got the job in the first place, whether it was the right idea, whether it's the right way to go. Because if you remember right at the time, Barry Trotz had just won a Stanley Cup, but in a season where he was rumored to be fired several times before the winning the Stanley Cup. And they had Reardon was like the heir apparent that the ownership and management just wanted completely to be the coach of this team. And they were basically not, because of this, they were screwing around with Trotz's contract all year long, right? And not really offering anything significant, especially years wise. They were giving him like 2 years, 2-year contracts and stuff like that. Trotz got pissed off and said, "No, just forget about it." And then suddenly Trotz wins the Stanley Cup, which no one saw coming. Which of course is you're never gonna look a gift horse in the mouth like that. But that really did throw this into a craziness. And so Reardon now gets the job. Trotz goes on, as we know. Then Trotz beats Reardon in his final game, which is just like incredibly poetic. And then and especially when you looked at the handshake line of that game with like Ovechkin and Braden Holtby talking to Trotz as they went through, taking a lot of time with them and stuff like that. You just had to be dying as to what they were saying. I wish you could be in there. So now Reardon's gone, and the question when the Capitals is which way do you go? You know, like
I have to say this. I've got to rip McClellan on this quote that there is no timetable. No, there is a timetable. The timetable is after the draft, you need a coach. You're not going to have a lot of time before the season starts after that.
Exactly. And you really, you know.
So that's the timetable.
And also, other teams are going to fire their coach here. You know, things are going to happen.
Well,
yeah. But there's not that many other teams left.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know whether there's going to be another. I mean, the Seattle
thing, but we don't have. We have some general managers that haven't hired yet. Remember, so like to me, those teams are going to have coaches.
Right, but Florida's not going to fire Joel Quenneville after 1 year.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. But Arizona. Do we know that Nashville's not going to have a new GM?
I don't think Hockett's getting fired.
Hockett's not going to get fired.
I don't know about that.
Oh no, he's not going to get fired.
Wouldn't be so
sure. I don't know. Again, that's kind of like blaming him for the loss in the prior round, and I don't think there's anything he could have done.
Right.
Oh no, you know, they might want to bring in a different kind of culture altogether. So, if they keep the same coach, if they stay with Sullivan, which some people think they will, you know, then that's fine. And I do not. Esmir says Chiarelli will be the next Panthers GM, and I do not think Chiarelli.
No, that's not happening.
I don't think he's going to be. I don't think Chiarelli's getting another job quite this time around, at least.
I mean, there was some talk about him in Arizona, but I mean, it was a fleeting mention, and then it sort of disappeared.
The NHL pushed GMs hard, you know, on certain teams. Like the NHL, when a team is going into a GM search, especially like a team like Florida or you know a team like Arizona with owners that haven't been in the NHL for their entire lives or what have you. The owners often will go to the NHL and say, well, who's out there? Like, who's the guys that the NHL pushes different GMs and stuff like that for sure. And Chiarelli is somebody that has been rumored to be pushed by the NHL. That's why his name keeps coming up. And the rumor is that Chiarelli is like very much like, you know, a guy who likes Gary Bettman a lot and agrees with a lot of Gary Bettman's theories. And therefore, you know, you get Bettman, White one, Chiarelli on the board of governors. This is the rumor that's out there. The reality of that situation is it's not the case. I mean,
right.
You know, I mean, it's just one of these crazy rumors that keeps. I mean, Chiarelli, even if he is the GM, it doesn't mean he's not. That means he's part of the one vote that the team has. On the board.
Chiarelli is brought up by the trolls in Edmonton who want to basically, you know, throw. You know,
right. He would, and he's just not. He's not viewed as that. You know, I mean, you know, Chiarelli's a Harvard guy. You know, the guy, the owner in Arizona is a Harvard guy. But you hear that kind of stuff. These kind of things you hear around right now that just, you know, are kind of like ridiculous.
But back to the coaching. Unless something out of the blue happens, it's more than likely that Washington is the only job that will open up for the upcoming season. Now, Seattle's not in the too distant future, and they might hire somebody. But you've got this core four of veteran coaches, and there's more than that. But you've got Babcock, Laviolette, Gallant, and Boudreau.
Yeah, I don't think you could bring in Gallant because I don't think Ovechkin will listen to him.
Yeah, I rule out Boudreau out of hand simply because he's been there before. Even
too familiar.
Right, exactly. It'd be just and his history there was losing in the first round or losing series, and they just had that with Reardon.
Right.
Babcock. Toronto will not give permission on Babcock unless the team that is interested signs him for the exact same salary or more than he was making because they want him off the books.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing that.
And that's almost $6 million. So I can't see Ted Leonsis. Does he have any more AOL stock that he wants to sell? Because I don't think that's going to happen. So to my mind, their rules. Then I don't know if I don't think Gallant's a good fit. So I would think Laviolette is a good fit.
I could see Laviolette.
I mean, from what I heard,
it's a shame that we're still recycling coaches, but it looks like that's what's going to happen.
I mean, we have a couple pretty successful coaches out there right now, though. That's the thing.
Now, I mean, successful with like, you know.
Within what reason, I know.
You have a veteran-laden team. The question is, you're going to be willing to bring in a young or a rookie type of coach to helm a veteran-laden team, which is why Laviolette makes sense because you get that initial burst every time he comes in somewhere. The team gets a bump like that first or second year every time you bring him in.
Right. Now here's the Capitals, okay? And this is the issue when I was talking to people about it.
Right.
This is from our Cap Central on Hockey Buzz, of course, which is where you should go for all of your, you know, cap needs. This team looks very different than any other team in the NHL when it comes to this page. More guys in this, like, you know, 2013 and 2021, 2023. I mean, they've got 5 guys signed through 23, 24. There's nobody in the NHL that has anything like that. I mean,
No.
so therefore, there's not a whole lot you can do with this roster.
Right.
This roster is your roster.
Well,
these are your guys. Some of them, and most of them are not young. I mean, this is not a young team.
I'll give you a name, but I don't know at this point if it's too late to get him. I would look at someone like Bob Hartley, but the problem is you might not be able to get him out of his KHL contract.
I think he's in Magnitogorsk, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Omsk. He's one of those.
He's one of them.
Yeah. Now, but the thing is, the Capitals have a couple contracts that they would like to move, whether they'll be able to move a Richard Panik, who's making $2.75 million, or Nick Jensen, who fell out of favor with them, making $2.5 million. I'm sure there are some other teams that would take those players on, but they would probably either have to give them something to take them or get literally nothing back in return.
Precisely.
Your point is well made, Ak, is the fact that they're pretty much stuck with that core group because they're all locked up long term, except for Vrana and Ovechkin. And they're going to have to get a coach to come in there to light a fire under their ass. And I don't
do have breaking news, Mike. So Calvert is out, and Johnson's out indefinitely now as well as Grubauer, and they're putting in Connaughton. See, this is the move that I wouldn't do. They're just going with the bland the veteran.
They're moving everybody up and putting.
Yes, they're going with the bland veteran that they feel like they can plug in and it'll be nice and safe. But to be honest, they need more than nice and safe now without Eric Johnson in there. They need real
big part of their team. Yeah.
They need real puck movement, and this is a mistake.
Dallas has a chance in this series now.
They do. They absolutely do.
Johnson being out indefinitely, and that again, that's your minutes eating. Not number one because Makar's the number one, but that's
Elliot Friedman reported that.
Yeah, that's their minutes eating, 25-minute a night penalty killing type defenseman, guy who lugs the mail, guys who he's out there all the time, and now you lose him, and now that means more minutes for Zadorov, more minutes for Ian Cole, more responsibility on Makar. That's a killer injury. It really is.
It really is that's the one player on defense that they really did not want to lose. Now, getting back to this, I do think that Babcock has a shot at this, and from talking to people around, and I don't think he should. I'm going to flat out say that I wouldn't do it, but and I also think because I've never been the hugest Babcock guy. I do think he's overrated as a coach. I do think he's got he's kind of got the media in the palm of his hand because he's really good in front of the microphone and stuff like that. But I don't as far as coaching goes, he's been very average, like in terms of that, for most of his career. I mean, he's had a couple wins there for sure with Detroit, but for a very long time now, he's been just his teams have not won much at all, or if anything. So to me, this is like, this, but does Ovechkin, and I think a lot of this will have come down to Ovechkin because we know Ovechkin's like right on the ends here of like going back and becoming like the king of Russian hockey for the rest of his life, which he can do. He can step back.
I do want to answer something too in the chat room. Michael Cohen, no relation, but I like the last name, said, when was Hartley a great coach last? 92? And I, my answer to that is in his first year in the KHL, he actually made it to the Gagarin Cup finals, but he lost to Siska, who is a completely loaded team. Right. If you think about that coaching effort there, he could still coach. I'm not saying hire him long term. I'm saying you've got a year on Ovechkin, bring in a different voice that hasn't been in the NHL for a while because maybe something different will happen.
And maybe they bring Dale Hunter in.
And Timothy brings up
one name
still doesn't want the job.
Russ, you know better than I do. Guy that's been mentioned a ton is Ricard Grondberg from Sweden.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a guy who's been rumored a lot. I'm wondering if he could be an option if they want. I mean, he's a coach that's got experience, maybe not in the NHL, but well respected in every single aspect.
Right with his statement that he makes here that the Laviolette's a disciplinarian, that's what the Caps need right now. The problem is, will Ovechkin be okay with that? And,
no, he won't. There will be a limit to how much of a disciplinarian he can be.
Is Michel Bergeron available?
Yeah. I think Michel Therrien I think is available.
I was waiting. There you go.
Anyway,
and boy, that would be seamless, wouldn't it?
That'd be perfect.
What would that last? 3 months?
Perfect fit.
2 months? 3 months?
Boy, Capitals fans, you should get a
Bowman's only 86.
#hire Therrien thing going on the Capitals.
You know what? This is a high pressure job now because Ovechkin's in the last year of his deal, right?
Yeah.
So you do it the wrong way and he might leave. You do it
Yeah,
the
I mean,
right
you
way.
have to show up asking that not only does he have to like the coach, but that you're on the right track with the coach.
Right. Otherwise, he might leave. You do it the right way, he might stay.
And that's the only thing in favor of Boudreaux is that him and Ovechkin got along. But the thing is, I think you have to go with an offensive coach because you can't you cannot. You've seen how this team reacted. I mean, they reacted positively to Trotz, who played the Nashville style there, but it was after a couple years of really pulling teeth with these guys, and then they realized they had to play this way. I don't think they're interested in playing that way anymore. With the high-flying guys like Backstrom and Kuznetsov and Vrana and Ovechkin wanting his goals, they can't play that shutdown Tortorella style. They're going to need somebody who's an offensive coach. That's why Laviolette might make some sense, but if he's a hard ass, then that probably doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that I don't think Laviolette's the best fit for this team, though. In general, I think and I don't know the Babcock is either.
And Bilesma?
No.
Bilesma has no. Bilesma's issue is like he lets the team run itself, like that. That's exactly what this team.
I still would go with John Stevens. I think at the end of the day, he's a good X's and O's guy. Ovi would get it behind him. He would definitely like the veterans, but also give some young guys a chance. He is at least a smart hockey guy that has a little bit of a different voice. I don't think that's a bad move at all.
Randy Carlisle.
Oh, my God. It's so predictable.
Oh, man.
It's amazing how we've gone through every single retread known to mankind and not able to propose anybody new that would be an option.
Jan, they've already said they're going for a veteran coach.
I know.
Yeah.
David makes a good point. He goes Kirk Muller, but I don't think the Habs would let him out of his contract.
Well, if it's a promotion, if it's to as a head
coach, hard to stop him if he's a head coach, but they can. I mean, they can.
If they could say you can't.
Look at Toronto, for example. Right. They did that plenty, right? So yeah, I mean, you can keep a guy back and then be forced to keep him on too long because you did that earlier in the world.
Yeah.
That could happen too. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a fun one to see for sure. I think. What was that?
Someone wrote Mike Keenan.
All right, that would be fantastic.
Ovechkin would leave by the middle of the season. He'd be in Russia already.
How about
as a hockey writer, I just beg you to let that happen.
How about Orville Tessier?
Oh my gosh, I mean, I'm so hire Terrian, #HireTerrian, Caps fans, go for it. You got it. All right, let's move on to the Milbury thing for a second because we didn't really talk about it over the week. We actually started talking about it on Friday as he was asking to get fired, and sure enough, Anthony was pretty on that one. He does. I don't
think he did it all for that reason, though.
I don't think he did it. I don't think he did it for that reason, but I also didn't think he was very careful about what he was doing because he's like, you know what, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. If they don't want me here, I'll get out of here. And I think he more had that attitude. Like, I'm just going to say what, I don't think it was, he just wasn't filtering himself, put it that way. Like, to me, everybody's got to filter themselves.
No, that's fair.
He just he wasn't filtering himself. Is it worth it? Was the comment bad enough in your opinion to justify this?
Yeah, because there's a large female fan base, especially now with a television audience. Why in the world are you alienating part of your fan base for archaic views that shouldn't exist in the world anymore? Now, the problem is when you say something like that, you open a lot of wounds for females that have worked in the industry, for teams, worked around guys that act like that, and that became a narrative on Twitter, and that's a horrible thing for the NHL.
Yeah, I mean,
and NBC.
It may have been the standard operating procedure when Milbury was a player or Milbury was a general manager that women are distractions, but now they're viewers, they're employees, and they're equals, and you don't talk like that. So
what if he had said family or distractions?
Right, and actually Brian Elliott's wife sent out a tweet with her and her 2 children sending our husband and all of our and the distractions at home some good luck, in the series or whatever. And even people in families that can't be in the bubble took umbrage with that, and I don't blame them.
Now and I said this as a joke before, is his comments as bad as what Tom Brenneman said during a Cincinnati Red broadcast? No, but it's bad.
It's bad. Tone deaf.
but it is completely tone deaf, and it is, you know, not with today's thinking. The question is, will he never be back on NBC? I can't.
He will never be
say
back.
100%, but I'd say it's about 98%.
100%. He will never be back.
Well, I think also with Milbury, right, it's an accumulation of comments.
I think that
plus more importantly, his attitude since he's gotten in the bubble, right? He appeared disinterested, and as you said, like really wanted to just get himself out and was attempting to get away. And again, it's an odd choice to use this to get yourself out, because what you've done is you've potentially now put your career at risk. Because I don't think if NBC does let him go, I can't see him getting a venue anywhere else that's going to hire him, especially after the comments he just made.
Just think about this. Yeah. Are you going to hire Mike Milbury when you maybe have women on the broadcast team, women in management, women in all different positions in these particular teams structures now? Are you going to hire Mike Milbury? How's that going to go over?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And it definitely, we live in a very, this is not, fortunately, a very conscientious era of stuff. You know, like that this has not been the case for years. This would not have been a big issue. And then I was talking to my wife, who's a huge feminist, a PhD engineer, who's had to deal with all kinds of stuff in offices forever because she works mostly with men.
Right.
And I asked her what her thought of this was, and she's like, "Oh, it's not so bad." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "I just don't think that's so bad." And I'm like, honestly, and I said, I think it is. I really do. And she said, well, women, we were used, maybe we're just used to stuff, but that to me of like all the stuff, we're just, and that's when she brought up to me, is he just saying, that family's a distraction, or is he sitting there and saying, that, women just want to, have sex with these guys all the time, and that's a distraction, or what's really being said there? And I think obviously everyone's taking it as the latter, but
well, let's just say I think it was subtle, but it was stupid.
It was stupid, but if we fired Milbury for stupid things he's done, we would have.
Right, and he should have been fired years ago.
Yeah, my bigger question, and what's funny about this is then I told her who said it, like because I told you guys earlier that we were watching the Colorado 5 overtime game with her, and she was like, "Who is this idiot talking about like that NHL overtime shouldn't be this way?" And all this. She was just like, "Who is this guy?" She was completely getting miffed by this guy. And I said, "Yeah, well, that's the guy, the same guy who said the stuff about the overtime." She's like, "Oh man," she's like, "Probably just wanted to get rid of him anyway." I do think there's some of that to it as well. Obviously.
Okay. My overall feeling on Milbury, and like I said, personally, I have nothing against the guy, but when he's as Cro-Magnon as he has been, you have to just shake your head. But honestly, I have no idea what he was being paid by NBC. But if you paid me to sit in the press box at Scotiabank Arena and I'm there for a 5 overtime game, attention playoff, I'm sorry, screw who I have to go to dinner with. I want to stay there and watch the game.
Yeah, no, it just shows to me like a guy who's really just like hockey is his job. Like this is what it is. And I've met people like that. I've met other hockey writers like that. Who I
really don't think we're going to see him again.
But my bigger question is, why did we see him this time in the first place? Like
because NBC liked the fact that he rode the edge, on the edge, got people talking. Now that he got too many people talking, that's why.
Yeah, I mean, when they're sitting down to have that meeting and they realize these people that they're hiring are going to do 3 games a day, like it's like I would have first thought to myself, well, who are the most creative people out there that you can find? Like, because they're going to have.
Yeah, but they're paying him the most, so they have to justify.
Here's the question, Russ: were you turning in to listen to his analysis, or were you turning in and muting the TV set?
It doesn't matter. They don't care.
Most people were doing the latter.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't prove that.
His analysis.
Okay, hold on. If that were the case, we wouldn't know what he's saying half the time. So that's not the case.
There's enough people who do listen because they have the broadcast on to know what he was saying.
Well,
and that was enough for NBC.
That was enough for him to get paid.
NBC dealt with the Jeremy Roenick issue, right, with Catherine Tappan, and his comments were clearly far beyond here.
Way worse.
Milbury said based upon in terms of crossing the line, but NBC took a stand and got rid of him. Milbury should have known in the back of his head that he's playing with fire here by making comments like this.
And if you want to get into the whole NBC, Matt Lauer, they're trying to do this now as a company, and there is no room for any of it anymore.
This has
didn't say it on their airwaves. Millbury did, and that's
right. Roenick said it on a already controversial
on a podcast,
like which there's nothing stupider than a hockey podcast, and that's what he said on. So like to me that was unbelievable that he got fired for saying something dumb on a hockey podcast. Moving on.
I mean, it was so offensive, and it was about somebody.
It was awful. No, Roenick was awful.
I'm with Timothy. I like Liam McHugh. I don't like what they're trying to do with his hair. He's probably using a curling iron for that effect. I don't understand.
And the glasses are a new touch, also, by the way.
No, glasses are fine, but the hair.
Glasses are a new touch, though.
There's a little bit too much going on there with the hair. For my.
Who was the baseball pitcher that tried to iron his shirt with it on him? What was that?
Yeah.
Yes.
What happened and burned
he burned himself. I remember that.
Yeah, who that was, but it was one of the baseball pitchers.
He was probably a Yankee, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit to I've tried to steam it.
Mike made a face.
What'd you say?
I said it was probably a Yankee, but I can't remember. And Mike made a face like he takes it personally.
Yeah. I mean, has anybody ever tried to steam a shirt with it on them? I have.
Kevin Elster.
It's not very much fun.
I remember you talked about. I remember when I was like 17 and I was late for work once in the hotel that I definitely tried it lukewarm. You can't do it.
You can't do it. It's impossible.
No.
Just hang the shirt up while you're showering. That's the tried and true method to getting wrinkles out of a shirt. There you have it.
But I do think one on a positive note. I do think that these playoffs and the broadcast have exposed people who definitely have a future in broadcasting.
Yeah,
and one of them is Kevin Bieksa. Kevin Bieksa is phenomenal.
We knew that was coming too, because
he's really good. Now the question is, he's made a lot of money in his career, and I don't know if he wants to move to Toronto.
So did Roenick, and other people have too.
Right, but it may not be something he wants to do, but he's very, very good at it.
He is, and and I do sometimes feel for people who aren't hockey players that are trying to get into this.
Well, I'll go back to the old story. Years and years ago, I told my dad I think I would like to be, and this was for baseball at the time, but probably like a broadcaster, maybe play-by-play guy, and my dad goes, listen, this is back in 1970 something, probably like 1978. And he goes, listen, those jobs are going to all ex-players. If you can, think of something else close to that. And he was right.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And it's hard because there's people who are out there trying to make a career of this. And I get it all the time. And I'm sure you guys do too. Get emails from people I want to go into this business, And, and I always just say, make your own voice, be yourself, and start your own thing. And if you really are passionate about it, and you can definitely make it happen, but it's not going to be easy. You're going to run up.
Not easy.
Yeah, Corey Schneider is the other one that Esmir mentioned, and I said that before. I thought Corey Schneider was good. Davy Jones brought up something that they mentioned on Saturday night on the second period intermission. The reporters on the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast about Kevin Weeks being a candidate for the Panthers GM job.
I mean, again,
I think didn't they ask for permission to interview Chris Giroux also? I believe a while ago. So
but Giroux's been doing it for 3-4 years now,
and
he'll be in the mix.
Here's the thing about that. I know a couple people who've really tried to interview for. I know one or two assistant GMs that have interviewed for a bunch of these jobs.
Here's the way I look at it.
Go ahead.
If Peter Luco is working with a cap guy and they want Kevin Weeks to be the face of the franchise so they can sell tickets, fine. I'm all for that. But let's not pretend that it's anything but that.
But here's the thing about Luco's actually doing more stuff with another company now, and I don't even know how involved he is with the Panthers.
No, I get it, but I'm just saying as an example.
Yeah. I mean,
if that were the case, I would bring Kevin Weeks in knowing that it's really more of a community relations guy that we're trying to sell tickets here. Because
I know somebody who was interviewed recently by a team, and I'm not going to say who it is because it'll be obvious.
Well, Pierre was interviewed. Would you hire Pierre Maguire as a GM? No, you wouldn't. That's why he's not getting hired.
Lawrence Gilman, the Leafs GM, Leafs assistant GM, has been.
That's a very solid name.
Yeah. But here's the thing about these GM interviews, okay? And people will tell you that quite often what happens. You get in there with the owner. If you're serious enough, the owner will be there. The president obviously will be there, and the vice president sometimes like a hockey relations guy or whatever. And what they ask you is, what do you think they would ask you in these things? What would you do to fix our team? That's the common thing. And what would you do to fix our team? And it's and
fire the coach.
Right. And if you remember, if you
Move the
remember,
team.
Mike Babcock wouldn't answer those questions. Remember the whole thing with Babcock?
Yeah.
Babcock saying, "I'm not going to answer the questions about what I'm going to do with your team because I'm not just here for you to get ideas." Like,
But what if the number one answer is move the team?
right. So I mean, you have when this happens, right? These things come up. There are GMs that are like, am I really going to tell you? And when I hear guys like Weeks or Pierre come in and stuff, interviewed and stuff like that, that's what I think of immediately. Like somebody,
Right.
Okay, we're going to get somebody in who's going to tell us these are hockey guys. They're going to give us their opinions, their 2 cents. We're going to hire them, but we're going to find out what the hell it is that they want to talk about, right? So to me, that's the issue, right? So I think that so there's going to be when so many people are hired that don't make sense. Often they're just like, this is a team like desperate to find out anything they can about what people think about them throughout the league.
Well, this one doesn't make a lot of sense. Funky said Mr. Fuji as the.
No, but someone, and someone said Michael Fuda, and look, I think he should be interviewed for all these jobs, and I think somebody should hire him, but it doesn't mean he's going to.
Does that mean that Mr. Saito is going to be his assistant GM?
Yeah. A lot of times, again, I think Fuda would take less to get in the door to be a GM and show what he can do. But again, a lot of times when we hear names like Scott Melleby, it's because teams go with familiarity, and Melleby was in that market, and he was a captain there, and he played there, and Fuda can't compete with that. He doesn't have
a real connection to Viola. That's the other thing too. Like, remember, Viola he's also a military guy, right? He was nominated to be Secretary of the Army by Donald Trump, for crying out loud. He was, and he turned.
I know he was.
But the reality is that West Point guys look for West Point type guys. That's something that you do.
I don't know if Scott Melleby had anything to do with it.
Right. So I'm just saying that if you're looking here, you got to think about that for a second. That definitely is the case. When you look at, the owner in Vegas is the same way,
Can you imagine John Tortorella at West Point? He would have been kicked out.
How much diplomatic experience did Woody Johnson have?
I know. So I mean, Hextall is a pretty good name for that, because not that he's not a West Point guy, but he's very
Hextall's a good name for that, but I don't
that Army type thing to him, and he's got the everything's so freaking secretive thing to him.
So the secret candidate is General Schwartz.
You know what the problem is, though?
Yes, right.
And this is why I don't think Hextall has a chance there. I don't think they want to go drastic one way or the other. They have a coach in Quenneville there that still wants to be able to compete. You can't bring in Hextall and compete. There's not going to be a situation where that's going to be allowable, because he's going to look at all the bad cap stuff Bob aside. He can't do anything with Bob.
Yeah, right.
Try and fix it. And if he tries to fix it, Quenneville's not going to have a good team for 3 years. Is he going to stick around for that? No.
Well, Hexy, right. And Hextall is not going to – I don't think Hextall puts himself in a situation where he doesn't have control over the coach at all. Like, I think I think Hextall is going to want to definitely be the guy who brings in his own coach and stuff like that. And you're right. You need somebody who's willing to work with you, but not be, not just do whatever you say. It does, make the line a little.
I mean, let's face it here. With a guy like Quenneville there, Viola is probably going to bring in someone that is going to have to communicate with Quenneville all the time about how to construct this team for him.
That's going to facilitate what Quenneville wants.
Correct.
Maybe somebody who knows Quenneville, who likes Quenneville, who's worked with them before. I think
now you've just eliminated a lot of guys.
You did eliminate a lot of guys. That's what I'm saying. Like, this giant list is not as big as it seems, and so these other people that are being called out, a lot of them are just fact finding missions. They're just and they also look good. You bring this guy in, you bring this guy in. I'll tell you, one guy I've reported before, and it makes some sense in Florida. Like a Bill Zito, assistant GM in Columbus. There's a guy who, what does he know? He's has worked with Quenneville before because they worked together. And also the other thing about him is he had Bobrovsky in Columbus, and knows how to deal with Bobrovsky, which is a big thing because he's not the easiest guy to deal with. Bobrovsky had a lot of success in Columbus. That's the kind of thing you got to look for in these guys, when they're bringing them in. You got to find the guys who are like, that make some sense. And I mean, they're really quiet. I don't know anybody I don't know all the different people that are interviewing. You hear tons of rumors. Also, remember the rumors, like sometimes like a Pierre McGuire rumor, I just wonder where it comes from. I'm not saying that,
it comes from Pierre McGuire.
Likely does. Okay. And I'm not saying that against it, but guys want to get their name out there. And I like Pierre. I actually do like Pierre McGuire a lot. So I'm not going to say that's 100% the case, but I also wouldn't blame him if it was. Like if you're a guy who wants to be a GM, again, like most people probably don't think McGuire wants to be a GM again because he's got such a good gig. So if he wants to be a GM again, he's got to put his name out there and say, hey, I'm interested in interviewing. So that's what's happening. There's so many different things there that really.
We're all for Pierre getting a GM job for obvious reasons, but he's not going to.
See, I don't agree with you guys on McGuire. But anyway, what do we think about Brian Boucher's job between the glass?
He's doing great. I just don't want to see him get too much thrust on him because the problem is it's great to have a guy down there, but I think most of us would agree when the guy down there does too much of the analysis that's supposed to be in the booth, then you lose your effectiveness on being so close to the game. And I think that's why half the time Pierre McGuire is saying way too much.
Right. The guy down there should be saying, oh, he just came off and slammed his stick. It's like that's the kind of stuff you want, right, from down there.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, though, that technologically, what they're doing with these broadcasts is fantastic. Because last night you had the A crew of Emmerich, Eddie Olczyk, and Boucher, and they were all three in different locations.
Yep.
Emmerich was in Michigan, I guess, that's where
right. Yeah, Emmerich's in Ann Arbor. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and Olczyk was in Chicago, and Boucher was at the building in Toronto. And there was very little that I noticed. Only a couple times where Emmerich's response for either a goal or for a big save was delayed by maybe a second or two, and that's because he's not at the. But it's virtually seamless. So
it really is.
Really been great.
You guys are such pros. Come on, Doc is
technology, them being able.
Yeah, I'm listening, but even when you listen to local broadcasts, like we get the Flyers broadcast here, and they're doing it remotely too, so we're hearing the Flyers announcers when they're on. They're doing a good job. You can't really tell.
It's a little home, Rich. Let's be real here.
Well, I tell you,
it gets a little crazy. It does. If
you're a Clement, should be in the bubble. Like Bill, I'm sorry, I'm just a huge Clement.
I know, but hold on. I'll remove you from this so you don't have to feel bad. I've sat down with other people who are not Flyers fans, and when they hear some of the stuff about Bill Clement, it defies logic. Now you can go.
Well, let me.
What do you mean defies logic?
It defies logic. Like, that should have been a penalty.
Yeah, I do think sometimes he might kind of thing because he works for the team, but I think when he doesn't work for the team, like what he did with ESPN when he wasn't hired.
Yes, he was great with that.
But okay. Even if he's slightly homerish, I recommend for anybody to listen to the Tampa Bay radio broadcast for about 5 to 10 minutes. You hear I love it. I had to listen to it last night when I was doing something just to hear Phil Esposito. I have never heard somebody in my life be.
Phil is classic, but you gotta love him. The thing about Phil during the games is as you listen, things are going on and you're listening. Remember, you're listening to him on the radio.
Come on,
you have no idea what happened. So the play's going on and he's describing. He's like, "Oh my god!" You hear in the background. It's like, what was it? Did an elephant just jump onto the arena? Like, what's happening here? Why is he so upset?
Phil is very ponderous. I'll put it that way.
I want to thank Funky for this comment. That'd be great between the glass during the Islanders game so I could sit beside Thomas Greiss. Yeah.
and then you have Dave Mishkin screaming bloody murder when Tampa Bay scores, but when it's like Bergeron to Marshall.
Right.
Doc Emmerich is total class, guys.
Doc is great.
I'll tell you this, recently.
Can I give Jim Jackson credit? He doesn't change his voice when the other team scores, so that's good for him.
Yeah, we were heading into this whole thing, and when my dog passed away, and Doc saw it on Facebook, and he wrote me the nicest.
Oh yeah, he's a big dog guy.
He wrote me the nicest email ever about this, and it was just, and here's a guy who's doing all this research, getting ready to go into the bubble, and he has time to do that. That was just crazy.
Yeah.
He's absolutely, and the most fun thing to do with Emmerich is this, and I told him I do this, so I have no problem, and he thinks this is hilarious. We call him the verb guy here, right? My son's over there. We call Doc Emmerich the verb guy because if you want to sit there and listen to a game with Doc Emmerich and write down every verb he uses, shuffled, moves up, slides, hithers it, twings it up, twice. It's just
swings it, winds it.
Right. He doesn't repeat verbs. It's astounding. He'll repeat some things, but he probably, I think one time we counted something like 86 different ways.
I watched the World Junior game with him after the outdoor game in Philly. I was watching it on TV and he goes, "Hey, you mind if I pull up a chair and watch?" And I'm like, "No." and it was fantastic. It really was.
He's just class all the way, and so many things that he does behind the scenes that people never know about.
We should touch on the 2 games tonight.
We should, yes.
All right, 2 games tonight. Man, it's 2:15, guys.
I know.
I thought we weren't going to touch on these things. That's why I wasn't, because we were talking about last night a little bit in the podcast. But anyway, let's talk about. We'll do fast here. Flyers, Islanders. If you want to see what we did go into this last night in detail with our little preview show. I still stand by what I said. My biggest issue with the Flyers, and I'm still going with the Islanders in this series, is that the Islanders are one of the toughest teams to come from behind on, and the Flyers are one of the worst teams at getting leads. And although they have fixed that lately, it sort of started creeping in again during the Montreal series, where they didn't come out as hard as they needed to, and other teams came out and jumped all over them. If they fall behind on the Islanders, they're not going to get going. And the other issue I have here is without Giroux, without Konechny, and without Couturier scoring, you're in trouble. And to me, the hardest thing to do is unslump yourself against the best defensive team in the NHL.
Yeah, I could see this game being 1-1 forever. I'm pretty sure they're going to go with Giroux at center, and if you go with Giroux at center, he almost doesn't get any points unless it's on the power play.
He really doesn't. He does. I mean, it's ridiculous to do that in my mind. They just shouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense. I know it balances.
The matchup is bad otherwise.
I mean, the line matching helps the Flyers for sure. That is something that's going to help because you have a really strong coach in them. But also, I'll say this too, and I wrote about it today. Carter Hart played really well in that series against Montreal, but wasn't like this miraculous. It wasn't like unbelievable.
No, I agree.
I mean, Montreal hit him with a lot of pucks. Montreal hit a lot of posts that could have changed that series drastically at any point. And Montreal and the Islanders, neither is like laden with a bunch of sharp shooting players. So, if Carter Hart plays good position, he's going to get hit with the puck a lot.
All right, here's a quote, Eck. I got to give it to you.
Yeah.
This is on Claude Giroux. He's one of those players that I believe will get better here. That's not a great quote.
Sure.
He's talking about his defense and his faceoffs. Like, again, this is what right now in Vigneault's offense, until proven otherwise, this is what Claude Giroux is, and that's not great.
No, I do agree. That's a problem.
Eck is only picking
something. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay. Eck is only picking the Islanders because he doesn't want to jinx the Flyers.
No, look, I mean, I'm picking the Flyers, but I do think it goes 7, and I do think the Islanders give him hell. And if the Islanders win, I would not be shocked. There's no way around it because they're playing great hockey, and they've got a lot going for them now. Basically, Trotz said everybody's playing, which if that means Clutterbuck's playing, that's pretty good for them too, because I could see this game starting off with like an over physical nature just to get it out of the way. So if someone like Clutterbuck's out there, I could see with Trotz trying to get him getting into a fight or starting something early, maybe with Konechny to throw him off, because everybody has been able to throw Konechny off really this whole time. So I could see that happening.
You noticed Vigneault's, and he might have done. Did he do this in New York? You guys can tell me, because you watched him in New York a lot. His tendency to throw his fourth line out right after.
Oh no, he loves it. That's why Ranger fans. Tanner Glass would get like 12 minutes of ice time, sometimes 15, because that fourth line would be rolling too much.
No, but right after you score a goal, like his.
Oh no, he'll do that.
That's his thing, and it really was just astonishing to me. Like even in like that in Montreal, I saw it happen a couple of times where Montreal would score immediately after the Flyers, and you're like, after the Flyers scored, and you're like, geez, look who's on the ice. Like they would immediately go to their fourth line.
Yeah,
and I'm not a big fan of that. Like I'm a big fan of the first like 3 minutes after a goal is used for either team, and you have to like keep it going.
Yeah.
The other game tonight
is Calgary. I was at Dallas. It was Colorado, Dallas.
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about the injuries to
Minnesota North Stars versus the Quebec Nordiques. Right.
Yeah, there you go. But there was continue to be like conflicting reports about Ben Bishop, Russ. It's like I saw something where he's now questionable, but he's still not going to start.
Yeah, I don't think he's hurt.
Yeah,
This
is really weird.
I think that they like Hudobin right now, and I think that's
what it is. They're wrong.
They could be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Bishop is the better goaltender.
Because again, unless we need to see what happens in a game, if Dallas was losing 4-0, would they put Jake Ottinger in? And my guess is no.
Right.
Yeah. I think that, and it's
not Ottinger's fault. He's a good goalie, but
why I kind of like Hudobin a little bit over Bishop in this series is because of Hudobin's quickness side to side. And you're playing against a team that really does that. Like that, this is a team that you have to be fast side to side on. And Bishop,
and there was one more thing too. Honestly, I think Dallas has a great chance tonight. We'll see if Colorado rises to the occasion. I did see a post by David Pagnotta talking about Patrick Laine possibly to the Habs. I didn't listen to the radio interview. I have to admit, I giggled about that because I don't even know if the Habs have enough to make that trade happen. They'd have to trade 15 draft picks. I don't see it happening. Like I don't
trade their first round draft pick for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe 2 first round draft picks. I mean,
you know what it would start with, and then it would have to be a lot more than just this. It would start with their best young prospect defenseman with Romanov.
Yeah.
It would start with that, and probably
it would. And I mean, and there is talk. You know, the Canadians have a really big contingency of Finnish players.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Laine comes in there. Is that good?
And then so
it would be a massive trade, though. I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm not.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've heard his name mentioned. I would look more right now towards something that I'm following up on, which is that I can't remember his name. Gosh.
Mike Hoffman. You talking about
No. We talked about it before. The Edmonton player who's in
Jesse
Puyarvi. Sorry, Puyarvi heading to Winnipeg. That's something I think is the only thing that's keeping that from happening. Maybe is Holland's not wanting to trade him in conference, but I don't think. I mean, if you got a guy who's over there, does that really matter? I mean, at this point, Edmonton. I think Winnipeg.
I think Holland would do it because I think they would want to get rid of that baggage.
Winnipeg sees a lot of benefit in that, from what I heard. So, I can see it. And there's another guy, Puyarvi, another Finnish guy. Maybe Montreal goes for him too. That's possible. Maybe he fits into Montreal better than he did there. That's all the time we have left. We went really long today, guys. What about that? What's up?
Oh, I said we went long.
We did go long. I apologize. I didn't think we were going to
complain this time either.
I know. I didn't even think. Anyway, here we go. Enjoy the games. Doubleheader tonight. 2 games tomorrow, and then back to 3. I hate not having afternoon games. I want to throw that out there right now. Back to 3 games on Wednesday. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey.